Hello, I'm Doug Muzzio. This is City Talk. School's almost over. It's report card time. Mayor Bloomberg and Chancellor Klein, what are they doing? How are they doing? What needs improvement? To help us understand what's going on in the New York City public schools is Seymour Fliegel, a frequent guest on Things Educational here on City Talk. Cy is the president of the Center for Educational Innovation, Public Education Association. Welcome back, Cy.
It's good to be back, Doug.
You're smiling. You've been smiling. Why? Explain.
I think a lot of exciting things are happening in New York City. Basically, this new reorganization. And by the way, they didn't have to go into reorganization. We'll
talk about this. Go ahead.
But basically, they've done well relative to where they were.
DOA, Department of Education.
To where they were when they started. Reading scores are up, and particularly the 8th grade is something I always look at.
Okay, so you're telling me that not only are they reorganizing, but they're producing demonstrable positive outcomes?
That's right.
And this is not an anomaly. This is a trend.
But what they're if you listen to Joel Klein,
go ahead.
He is looking upon this almost as a civil right. He keeps quoting the '54 decision. He keeps quoting the crisis in the schools and so on. He said we haven't done enough for minority kids. That the gap is still too great. So I give him a lot of credit for that, and that is why I think this reorganization. They easily could have said, hey, we're moving along nicely, we could do much better, we're working on it. The change they're making now is a revolutionary change.
Explain it. And explain why you're smiling.
Well, I'm smiling for a number of reasons. So I guess to be upfront, we are one of the partnership support organizations. That means
CEI-PEA.
Yes. So that means we're going to have 55 schools that we will be supporting and helping.
Wow.
That's a lot of schools. You know, if you think about it, the city of Pittsburgh has 38,000 kids in its whole system. It's a large city. Mm-hmm. So 55 schools is a large district. But what's kind of fascinating about it is it's an empowerment project where he's bringing power to the school site.
Okay, so you're devolving power, responsibility, and money to the school, basically the principal.
That's right. The principal and his leadership team or his staff and so on. And they've added resources to it so that now you can have a real accountability system. You know, for the first time, principals have signed a contract that basically says, if I don't deliver on what my goals are and what the system's goals are, I give up my job. So there's real accountability on the part of principals. There's additional funding. There's decision making. There's a greater deal of autonomy. This is what at CEI-PEA we've always done. Mm-hmm. That's what we did in East Harlem. The school becomes the center of change. Now this is revolutionary, and especially for a system to do it. That's what's fascinating.
Are there any models out there? Has any other jurisdiction done what we're trying to do here in the city?
The closest may be up in Canada a number of years ago, where they really, what this is decentralization to the school.
Right.
No school boards.
Right.
Now,
you went from macro centralization to radical decentralization.
That's right. That is an important difference because that's, we think, is where real action takes place. Mm-hmm. And it gives principals a tremendous opportunity. The principal who's ready to take leadership will love this program. The principals who are not ready to take leadership, who love the old bureaucracy, are going to have to make some dramatic changes or they're not going to be there.
Okay, this is just too detailed for me not to interrupt.
Go ahead.
You've got 1,400 principals out there?
Yes, yes. Maybe 1,450.
1,450. Okay, let's pull a number out of the air. 25% of them don't cut it. That's 350, 375 principals.
That's right.
Where do you get them? If you get rid of them, is there a pipeline? The Leadership Academy ain't producing them, and it doesn't look like the system's producing it internally. Where are they going to come from?
Well, that's a very good question. So what has to happen is somehow the message has to get out that this is a different ballgame. There are a lot of people who didn't go into becoming a principal because principals were in a very bad spot. Mm-hmm. They were caught in between without any power, without any authority, and without any support, basically.
And I would argue inferior union leadership.
Well,
you don't have to say it, I'll say it.
I'm not going to argue with that. But I think, by the way, I think this guy, Ernie Logan, is a major improvement.
I agree, and so clearly the contract and what it contains.
It's a good contract.
I think for everybody.
For everybody. You know, a principal, if they took advantage of all the possibilities, could end up making $200,000 a year. I think they should get that.
Right.
If they do a great
job.
Right,
I agree.
So we're hopeful about that. But there are other reasons why we're hopeful about this. It puts control not only into the principals, but into teachers. And with the system that they're introducing, I think they're paying $80 million. For $80 million, you got to get a system other that says, okay, this is what you got on the test.
This is a data gathering and analysis system.
And it is a data-driven instructional program.
Okay, let me interrupt again. Is the data good, meaning are we measuring the right things, and do we have the right analytical models, if you will, and the right people to analyze what might be good data?
Well, Doug, you know, being a teacher yourself, you understand. The system we had for many years, we gave a test in April, the test came back June or July, no one ever looked at the test and said, what did the kids not understand?
Right.
Now, that not only are they going to have the state and city tests, but there will be interim tests that basically are skill testers, not whether you get promoted or don't get promoted, whether you label a kid or something. And then there will be a prescription provided of how do you deal with a kid who seems to forget how to find the main idea of a paragraph.
This has got a CompStat-like quality to it in terms of being performance and data-driven.
Absolutely. It is
but what's the accountability mechanism? How do the principals who have similar problems sit down and talk with one another about, or who's the liaison in this reorganization?
Okay, there are a number of things. It's not just the test data. There is peer review, where you come to the school. A team will come to the school and make all kinds of evaluations, suggestions.
And this comes out of out of Tweed.
That's right. And there will be a report card for every school, an A through F.
So on a multiple set of dimensions?
Climate of the school, discipline, instruction, outcomes, and so on.
And you have strict measures.
They have strict measures for that.
Okay.
So for the first time, principals now talk data. They really do.
Just like the cops began doing it with
That's right.
CompStat.
Years ago, if you asked the principal, let me find, I'll call my test person. Now they all know the data about their school. So that's the first step. And with the technology, $80 million is a lot of money for computers.
And this went to IBM.
That's with IBM. So that they're going, and they have this ARIS program, what really does individualize prescriptive instruction for kids in the class.
Each kid.
Each kid. That's
so
amazing.
We're going to have ongoing longitudinal data.
You're going to have, that's right. That's right.
That's going to be in some kind of database
that's
that can be accessed.
That is accessed
and
very
analyzed
easily in the classroom.
And have prescription. We're going to have
that's
teachers who are capable of doing this?
Well, that's going to be the challenge. And look, you got to have faith in teachers. If you don't have faith in teachers, then the ball game is over.
Right.
Most teachers want the best for their kids. Almost all teachers.
Sure.
Right. So the job becomes, and they will like it because they'll get good at it. You know, I know something? It's not that hard. Instead of coming in and saying, I wonder what I'm going to teach to these kids, if you have a body of knowledge that says, hey, look, in the area of reading, kids don't know how to find main ideas. You can teach a kid how to find main ideas. You give him 5 questions. He'll know how to find the main idea. And on the simplest level, you tell him, is it in the first topic sentence? If it's repeated in this last sentence, you got a pretty good shot at finding the main idea.
I'm teaching this at the graduate level.
Okay, all right. But so that's what's good about this. And it's an accountable system. And you got to give the mayor and the chancellor credit for going about to do this.
Talk about the union and teachers. I mean, I understand the central importance of teachers, having been a public school teacher as you were, and a parochial school teacher. Talk to that issue.
Well, let's take the union. It seems to me that the union is not fighting this thing. Randy Weingarten may make some comments, but she's not fighting this thing because if handled correctly at the school site, and what I mean by correctly, I don't worry that principals will become dictators. You know why? Because their job is the only one on the line. And if you're a dictator, see, the one thing that protects dictators in the political world is no one's going to touch them.
Right, right.
But here, you're dependent upon having a staff that is supportive. You're dependent upon having good morale in the school, or else they could settle you down the river.
Also, parents, I mean, we can make the same, let's talk about parents later.
Parents.
Go ahead.
You can make the same argument for parents.
Go ahead.
It is easier to organize a school. I always thought, I remember Al Shanker, originally was against decentralization.
Right.
Learned very quickly he could control decentralization.
They took it over.
They took it over.
The UFT.
Right.
I was a union delegate, I know.
So in any school, teachers are going to have more input because the principal needs that input. He needs them working with him. The days where you just say, you will do this or else, they're over. And the principals are very much aware of that. And don't forget, on another level, every principal was a member of the union at some time in his or her career.
Right.
So you don't have anti-union principals out there.
Right.
You got guys who went, and gals who went through this process.
Right.
So what I think happens, it forces greater involvement for teachers and for parents at the school side, simply because that principal is really accountable and he'll lose his job.
How do the principals get support from the system, the bureaucracy?
Okay, now we go into what the
structure.
system...
Oh, please.
The structure.
Go ahead.
I'll try and do it quickly.
No, and I know you do it simply, but go ahead.
Every principal in every school had to select a support organization. Now, there were 14 choices.
And these support organizations would do what in terms of your job description?
It's a very good question, because keeping in mind that this is an empowerment process, so it can't be the support organization says, you must do this. The support organization has to first determine what the needs assessment in each school is with the school.
So you need to do some kind of audit.
That's right, with the school.
Right.
And you have to come to some agreement. You say to the principal, well, what are your goals? What do you need to have done? And the support organization is supposed to provide that support. They're not supposed to come in and say, you know what I really like? I like Success for All, and that's out. That's not going to happen. Incidentally, Success for All was one of the private partners that didn't get any schools to sign up with him.
Talk about that process. There were 1,450 schools.
Okay, 1,450 schools. There were 14 choices. So we
of these PSOs, these
it's not just PSOs. Local. Let's start with the local support organization.
Okay. Go ahead.
Remember, there are no longer 10 regional superintendents.
I know, we lost
That's
those
over.
lists.
They're
right.
gone. The bureaucracy's getting a good beating here.
Right.
So
which they created.
That's right.
Okay.
Which you and I could agree they deserved.
Right. We've talked about this.
Right. So there are 4 former regional superintendents. I could name them to you, but it doesn't mean anything to it.
And I presume this was the cream of that crop.
Let someone else.
Okay.
All right.
Okay. I'm sorry.
I don't want to make that judgment. Let's say,
which goes to the issue, though, of the competence of the central board.
Let us say
the central administration.
Let us say the chancellor felt that these were the top people.
Okay.
Okay.
We'll be euphemistic. We'll leave it like that.
That's fair enough. And each of them has a concept. So Kathy Cashin in Brooklyn has a core curriculum. The gal Judy Chin up in Queens, which is citywide, by the way. They don't just come geographically.
Right.
And she has interdependent kind of instruction and so on. So those are the 4 house deals. They're called local support.
So out of the 14, 4 are from the house.
And they will get most of the schools.
Why?
Because most people are comfortable with Look, if you're
I
a
get it.
principal
I get
in
it.
your superintendent's district and you got along with that superintendent,
okay.
you're going to say, hey, when do I have to look for trouble?
Okay, so you've got 10 others. What
Yes,
are the,
okay.
what- go ahead.
Okay. Then you have what they call the empowerment zone, even though they're all empowerment. They
Which you
should have
explained
given
in the last show.
That's
I know.
right.
They should
Okay.
have given it a different name.
It should be a different name.
Go ahead,
All right,
explain.
so let's call it Empowerment 1, and all the rest are Empowerment 2, because every
Okay.
school is empowered. And that's Eric Nadelstern, and he had 331 schools last year.
And he's in the central, he's at Tweed.
Yeah, he's the tweet guy.
Okay.
And he now will have 480 schools.
Okay.
Okay? The third,
Let me just ask
That's
you
a
something.
lot.
How do you handle, how does one guy or one bureau handle 480
I'll
schools?
tell you how you can handle it. If you believe in total empowerment and hands off, you can handle 600.
As long as you have the right people to measure.
That's
and
right.
you've got the right people providing support both to your principals, but staff development to your teachers.
Yeah, he will have teams in each of his
Are you
cohorts.
sanguine that you can grab around 480
That's
of
a
these
lot.
schools?
I think that's a lot.
Okay, go ahead.
I think it's a lot. And then there were 9 partnership. That means not-for-profit organizations that you could select from.
And
so that includes
CEI-PEA was one of them.
CEI-PEA is one, New Visions was another, Replications was another, CUNY was another.
Okay.
So, and they could select from those.
So you presented them with a
Yes.
plan or a proposal?
What happened? The chancellor very wisely had a large meeting at the Hyatt and so on. They did a very good job. There's a whole unit on this who PowerPoints explained what each of them were. And then it was up to each of those organizations to do their peddling, if you will. We didn't do a lot of peddling. I want to be honest with you. And because to come with the PSO, the private, takes a little more courage, I think, because it's the unknown.
Sure.
Right. So that we were pleased. I told John Falco, who's the director of our field operation, don't talk anybody into it, even though we're schools we've been working with for years.
Right.
If a guy in the school says, you know, I'm a little worried, I'm scared, and so on, because personally, I don't want principals who are afraid.
Right. You want risk
understand?
takers.
I
You
want
want
someone who's saying,
alpha
hey,
types.
what's going to happen to me?
Right.
You know, these guys are not going to kill me.
Right.
But at least, so in that regard, so we ended up with 55 schools.
Okay.
That was almost better than a third of all the partnership schools.
Okay, now, can you guys hand with that, what I just asked of DOE?
Yes.
Can CEI-PEA
Well, we've been
handle
doing it for
55?
years.
Okay.
We've had
Explain
over 180 schools.
Explain what you will be doing.
Okay,
This
what
is
we'll-
at the core of this,
That's right.
this whole system.
Basically, the first thing we'll be doing, we know a lot of these schools, some we don't know. It's fascinating that they selected us. You go in and you meet with the school leadership team, the principal, and you do a needs assessment based on what they perceive. Now, it's not hard because we know they're going to be judged on math and language arts and
So you know the criteria of evaluation.
That's right. You know what that is.
Right.
And they're going to say, hey, we need work in this area. We need a good math teacher. We need a program. This is the program we think we'd like to work with. What do you guys think? We say, hey, how do your teachers do with them? And how are you doing with it? If it's a good program, stay with it. If it's not, you make the decision
Right.
that you need another. We'll
Right.
help you find another
So
program.
you send sort of these SWAT teams
Now,
out
this is
to
what
these
we have.
various
Okay,
schools?
so each of them, it's very complicated, but we have for each cohort of, say, anywhere between 10 to 20 schools.
Okay.
We'll have 3 cohorts, say,
Okay.
of 20. We have a network leader who, in my opinion, is like a dispatcher. They're all on 24 hours, 7 days a week, 365, including Yom Kippur. I once asked that question. I said, you get somebody who will sit in for them.
Right.
And they will each have, they'll have the network leader, then they'll have a person who is a support guy and take care of all the problems that you have, personnel and so on. Then they'll have someone who will really be able to help them with the evaluations. What are the things that they have to meet?
Right.
What is the accountability system?
Right.
They will be accountability experts,
Right.
hopefully, and they'll be
Okay.
trained
Okay.
and so on. So that's the basic
And you
team.
feel that that's sufficient to
No,
cover?
I don't.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Then we have 50 experts, consultants that we've been working with for years. And one of the benefits we have is we worked with these people when they were heading schools.
Right.
So we know they're good at what they do.
Right.
We have a choice. We don't have to take anyone that we don't think is good.
Right.
And that's the network leader will get a request. I need somebody to help me with the budget.
Okay.
We got a team where a guy named Joe Capra goes in and saves them money.
Okay.
He's the most popular guy we have.
Right.
Guy comes into school, suddenly you got $60,000 you didn't know you had. You say, when are you coming again?
Right, please
tomorrow
come.
morning.
Right.
And then they say, can you do scheduling? Can you do all kinds of
Right.
things? So based on what their needs are.
Right.
So we'll have people who will come in and help with budget. We'll have people who help with math or language arts based on what their needs are. So and
if you do a diagnosis.
we are offering them close to 200 additional hours. That's a lot of hours.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So
when does this start? I mean,
well,
has it started?
It starts
well,
July 1st, but we're bringing them all together June 21st. And by the way, this is just our own style. We think it's got to be fun.
Oh,
you
please.
understand?
So
yes. our first meeting with them is going to be at the Harvard Club. We're going to have cocktails and hors d'oeuvres, and we're just going to get them to know who's there. They're going to look around and say, oh, look who's here. And we'll introduce our people to them, John Falco and his team, and so on. So they were already gotten a letter that says, welcome to the family. We think in terms of family.
Okay.
Now, we know from all the years, you see, we have a tremendous advantage. We've been doing this for
forever.
I think it's September.
We're not commenting on your age, but you've been doing it a long time.
I think it's September. I'll be doing it for 50 years. I can't believe I'll be doing anything for 50 years. So we've been doing this. It is amazing what really builds credibility. Our principal calls John Falco goes to 6, 7 schools a day, maybe more, 5 boroughs. Principal has a problem. You take care of that problem. That principal is yours.
Right.
Because there's no way they have of dealing with problems.
Sure. And that's why these bodies exist.
That's right. And this is why we have access to almost every level in the system.
Okay, now this is supposed to be in place, ongoing,
it
and
starts
running
July 1.
on. But I mean, when the kids walk in September,
it's there.
You're going to sit here where you're sitting, and you're telling me this is how it works.
That's right. The first 90 days are critical.
I would think the first 30 days. Right.
Yeah, it's critical. How do you open a school?
Right.
What kind of conference do you have?
So this summer is extraordinarily important.
Very important.
Okay.
So that's what's going to happen.
Okay. Bloomberg and Klein, to a certain extent, you guys have 900 plus days. We've talked about what you can do. You and your organization. What should and can they do, and what will they do, if you could talk to that?
You're a political scientist, so you'll understand this. When you give some people freedom, it is very hard to take it back in a democratic society. In a dictatorship, I guess you can. But even there, it's hard.
Right.
People say, well, what's going to happen after the mayor's gone and Klein is gone? 2.5 years is a long time.
So they've got enough time to produce results. Now, you and I have talked about this before. There's one thing about management structures and processes, and then there's the other, the outputs, the bottom line, the kids learning.
All right.
So they've got enough time to do this.
Yes, because this is what they're doing. First of all, you're giving schools more resources, more money.
Okay.
It's very hard
and
to take money back.
And we're getting more money from CFE, too.
That's right.
And that's part of it.
That's part of it. But think about it. Once you're in a school and you get money, it is very hard for the system to take it back, because it really organizes parents and school people and so on. It's not like the guy the chance to say, oh, sorry, we didn't mean to give you that additional 170,000. And with the goal, see what the goal is, I think the people will argue, the figure used to be 50% of every dollar ever got to a school.
Right.
Klein and the mayor want to get it to 70 to 80%.
Going to the school.
Yeah, that's the model you asked earlier, the Edmonton model.
Right.
Where they decentralize to the school. In Edmonton, I believe the school gets 90% of the dollar. Now, once you have that, you have a constituency that's not going to say, well,
multiple stakeholders.
That's right.
You've got administrators, teachers,
you got everybody.
parents, kids.
They're not going to say, oh, the mayor's gone.
Local political officials.
Let's give this back to a bureaucracy.
So you're saying this has got a momentum of its own, number one.
Right.
Number two, that they've got enough time to deliver. Do you expect them, I mean, based on your assessment of outcomes, are they delivering? And what's the benchmark? Whatever the scores are at whoever's giving them.
The graduation rate, attendance, suspensions. That's not hard to look at.
Okay.
Because they've got the technology now to know much more about all these things. Now, will they, after 2.5 years, reach the point where Klein will say, well, we've now closed the gap completely? No.
Never.
No, but he understands that you got to close it, and you begin to do that. And even you can argue with the graduation rates and so on. They claim they have 60%, even if it's 50%.
Right, but it seems like Mark Twain's lies, damn lies, and
That's right.
statistics when you hear this stuff.
But they're now going to accept the state.
So we're going to have one uniform number.
You'll have a uniform number.
And is that number a good number?
Yeah, it's going to be a good number.
Okay.
Listen, if this doesn't work, if by giving schools more resources, giving them greater autonomy in decision making, holding them accountable, doesn't improve pupil performance, what will? You understand?
So you've just raised the question that needs to be answered, and do we get a partial answer? When do we get a partial answer to this?
Well, it seems to me, I'll bet you after the first year of this system, change in education
so
means
you
at
come
least
back
3 years.
Next June.
Yeah, I'm going to say to you,
Go ahead.
If things have gone well, I'm going to say, hey, look at this. The scores have gone up, attendance is up, the people feel better about their schools.
And you will have an explanation of why that's the case.
Why that's way. And one of the things you look at is who's coming back to public education. It's an interesting statistic. Where do people go?
Right.
And I'm willing to predict that in certain parts of the city, you're going to see folks who've been sending their kids to private schools coming back.
And you're also predicting that you're going to be attracting principals to the system because we can't produce the number of principals.
That's right. I'm saying that with a better condition for principals, if it's real, and I think it's real, why wouldn't we get more people saying, I might want to be a principal? Right now, many people don't want to be a principal who could be a principal.
Okay.
You see, who are more comfortable doing what they're doing. There may be an AP, there may be a teacher even. But now they're upping this.
And you're excited about this, and we're going to have you back. We're going to have you back when school opens to see how this summer went.
Hey, you know what I like about this? So I'm accountable. So what are you going to do to me? I'll come back and I'll be honest with you. Say, hey, this is working nicely. This is not working nicely. Hey, much better than what was happening before. We were in agreement about that. This system has moved forward. Is it enough? No. Joel and the mayor will tell you it's not enough. Here's an opportunity. There's going to be a national innovation that's going to impact on the whole country. So we've got to give them a lot of credit on that.
We'll leave it at that.
We haven't discussed this wonderful grant we got, but that's for the next show.
That's for the next show.
Okay.
Thank you. Hello, I'm Doug Muzzio. Let us know what you think about this show. You can reach us at CUNY.TV. When you get there, click on the bar that says Contact Us and send your email. Whatever it is. Thanks, no thanks, obnoxious, do it. Send it.